Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer. This is Sasha. Spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the dumb stuff I did to get put in prison. I've also got a lot of stories about the crazy stuff that happened when I was actually in prison. God forbid you end up in prison. You want to make some of the same mistakes I made. So, I was released from prison and put in a halfway house. Now, the halfway house isn't just for people who just don't have anywhere to go. No, in the federal system, they will let you out early to go to a halfway house. It's time towards your sentence. You're still in BOP custody, so if you mess up, they send you back to prison. Once you've completed it, you're no longer in BOP custody. You're on probation, on federal probation. Now, I had to do 4 months in this federal halfway house because I did the RDAP drug program, which takes a year off of your sentence. I was only supposed to do 4, but by a clerical error, I ended up spending 6 there. 6 months there. 2 months more legally. The counselor acknowledged it. She said, "Well, you're right." She said, "But by the time I send the paperwork in, you'll be out of here." She said, "They're so slow moving." I didn't mind because I'm going to get to that in a second. So I get to this place, and just like in prison, often, if you end up in a 4-man room when you first get to a unit. That's usually, and then you find somebody to room with later on. And at the low security, sometimes you'd end up in a dorm, and then you'd move to a 2-man. Well, there's a big open dorm. It's probably, I'd say, about 20 by 60 foot long. Just bunk beds all down the sides. People have got TVs. You can have TVs. And PlayStations, Xboxes. It was not bad when I first got there. When I first got there, all that was allowed. Now, you weren't allowed to have a phone with a camera. But everybody snuck a phone in with a camera. But if they found that phone, iPhone, whatever it be, you won't get it back. They keep that. I'm sure they probably sold it, kept it for themselves. Hard to tell, but you weren't allowed to have phones, so they'd keep it. And you got metal detected every time you came, every time you left. And it really was not bad. I can't say it when I first got there. Stuff changed, though. This woman went on a rampage and just messed the whole place up. But they had just quit allowing cigarettes. They were allowing people to go outside 10 minutes every hour to have a smoke break. Couldn't smoke on the property because it was federal property, and by federal law, BOP, the federal system, they don't allow tobacco. It's been not allowed for some time, but they were letting people walk to the edge of the parking lot and stand on the sidewalk to smoke, so then they weren't technically on the property. This building was shared with the Salvation Army. Now, we never saw that part. That was a separate half. It's the Salvation Army, but half of it was the federal halfway house. And I'm sure they pay a good bit, and it helps make that happen. We shared a kitchen with them. We weren't allowed to speak with them, and we couldn't go in the kitchen when they were in there. It was completely separate because they've got kids in the Salvation Army. Now, couldn't have any chomos in this halfway house because it was shared with the Salvation Army. Okay? That was a big thing because, certain people, I was like, man, that guy might have a weird charge. He's like, can't have anybody on any type of registry here. It's Salvation Army. And I was like, oh, shoot, okay, well, I guess he's all right then. So, just a weird dude. But when I first got there, now, there's 2 separate parts. Like I said, this dorm part is the first part. And it has its bathroom. It's a big bathroom. It's got like 8 stalls. Only 1 urinal, 8 stalls, though. 4 showers at the end. There's a washing machine. I think it was a washing machine. Yeah, and people would hang out in there. When I walked in there, people were just hanging out in there smoking. It looked like joints. This one guy with dreads who was ghetto as could be. I liked the dude. He was fun. Me and him got along, okay? Because there was this little punk counselor that was illiterate that dressed like he wanted to be rich, like he tried to look like he was rich. But when it came to certain stuff, you saw he was illiterate. But he was just a bully. He was a skinny black man with glasses. And he loved for you to try to argue or do something. He'd come room, tear stuff up, and everything else. I basically steer clear of people. I know how to handle. I won't play their game. I'm not doing that. Avoided him. But anyway, the ghetto guy, he got in his face one day. That was funny. There was a situation. I'll tell that in another one. But anyway, the guy, he's smoking. It looks like a joint, and I find out later it's K2. Synthetic stuff. Now, he never lost his stuff. He stayed in there all day smoking. All day. Like, literally. Every time I went in the bathroom, he was standing behind that washing machine. I think he had like a bucket or something. He threw it in and somebody walked in or something. But where they used to allow cigarettes, and they had just quit allowing them, everybody was smoking in the bathroom. Now, they gave it like a 2-week period where they wouldn't get you in trouble, but they confiscate it. Then it would be a write-up. Now, coming out of prison, I heard the halfway house is a trick up if you do the RDAP drug program. Some people refuse to take a program, gave them a year off for stupid reasons. It gives you a year off, and then you get out another 18 months total. But I heard if you miss one of your drug classes, if you do this, if you do that, you're going back to prison. And I was terrified about that because I'd heard so many things. And at certain halfway houses, I'm sure that's true. My mom was an angel. I missed my mom. She missed me. She drove from Roanoke over 2 hours, to Winston-Salem 3 days a week to drive me to my drug classes. She knew if I missed one of them, I'd go back to prison. And, if the bus, something goes wrong, they don't care. So, she was good enough to take time from her small business, which depends on her to keep running, to come up there. And it was great. We got to spend a lot of time together. I miss my mom. Just miss my mom a lot, my family. I don't have a lot of people that are close with. A handful of family members, Casey, and, coaches. But, Mom's done a lot. I wouldn't be here right now. I'd still be in prison because if she had not gone to the lengths that she went to help expose what was happening in my case, I wouldn't be here. But anyway, so go to the drug groups, everything else. And now you ask yourself, K2 and stuff like that, why don't they fail a test for it? Because the halfway house didn't test for it. They didn't test for it. They can test for it. They didn't test for it. So my first introduction to the scariness of how crazy this stuff makes people. See, I've never done it. And from what I see, it didn't tempt me to do it either. Okay? I walk in the bathroom one day. A couple guys I spoke to, cool in passing. Now, at this point, after you've been there so long, you move to the other rooms. Now, there's a hallway, it goes down a long hallway, and then there's 4-man rooms. I'm in one of those 4-man rooms, and there's a separate TV room. In general, the dorm TV room, even in the halfway house, it's kind of segregated. Like, it was mostly white TV room on this other side with the 4-man rooms, and then, it's crazy how people segregate themselves. My buddy was in there, so I hung out in the other one, not the white one, for the longest. As long as he was there, I hung out with him. Man, he was a hustler. He organized a comedy show from inside the halfway house. Had to get special permission and everything. Of course, they breathalyze you every time you go back in. But for him to organize a comedy show, get names, and this was like a venue, and it was an event. He made a good bit of money off of it. That was impressive. Also showed me he had some money saved up to put something like that together. Guy was a hustler. Okay, big dude used to lift weights. That's how I knew him. He was at the same low I was at in my building. We got along. But anyway, when I got moved to the other side, the bathroom over there is much smaller. It's only got, I believe it's 2 or 3 stalls, okay, and a couple showers. But the other bathroom's huge. Now, when I first get in there, I hadn't been on that side that long, and I walk in the bathroom. The first day I saw the people freaking out off of it. I was in there, and this guy smoking with his friend, and his friend's freaking out a little bit, and he's doing this. And I'm like, hey, yo. And I take my thumb and I snap it. Snap your fingers an inch away from somebody's face and see if they can not blink. I bet you can't. I bet you can't do that. Even if I hear a clack loud enough, I'm going to blink. I did that an inch away from his face like 5 times. He didn't blink. He wasn't there. And he went swimming for 5 minutes. His buddy freaking out, and I'm like, calm down. Probably come out of it here in a second, no need to get him in trouble. And he came out of it. And then his buddy, Spanish was like, yo, man, you don't need to do it like that. You see, I do it. I handle my stuff. You need to know your limits. Don't do too much. And then the Spanish dude lights it up, and guess what? He's swimming. And then I babysit him for a few minutes. And I was like, oh, Lord. And then there was another time. I went in to take a leak, and I was at a urinal at this point. There's a handicap stall at the end. This guy's freaking out, screaming, saying he's on fire. And he rips the door off to the stall, rips it clean off. And I'm like, oh, Lord, I got out of there. No. And, yeah, that was the second one that really got me. But the third one absolutely baffles and amazes me that this halfway house was this incompetent. See, I had help with some friends from home to make it look like I had a job training at this place to get me ready because I was going to teach jiu-jitsu when I got back home. It was a local martial arts instructor. He's a good family friend, known me since I was a kid, that helped get this whole setup. It wasn't so, but we made it look like that. And basically, you know, as long as the halfway house gets their money, they don't care. So basically, we set up a corporation that paid me, and it looked like it. And it's costing me money to pay the halfway house to get a trained jiu-jitsu, and we had to work it out with the place. Now I got lucky. There was a girl at that place, Hannah. I love Hannah to death. She's wonderful. British girl, trained Muay Thai in Thailand. She's cool as can be. Yeah, she's cool as can be. And you know, I had to have help. I had to have somebody sign off to say I could come train with them, because you can't even get a job or nothing until somebody signs off saying you can. You have to turn into your counselor when you're going to leave 2 days ahead of time. They give you so much time to be out, and you got to be back by that time. Now, you always tell them you're going to take the bus, even though you're not, because they give you an extra 4 hours for bus ride. So you walk down the street and either have a taxi or, you know, somebody else pick you up. So that's how you get more time out. You know, it's how I got to spend time with my mom. Otherwise, it wouldn't have had but, you know, 20 minutes to get to and from if I told them I was being driven. But she went to these places to see if I could train jiu-jitsu at any of these places. Okay, got a house in Radford that was willed to me by my grandma that saved up a substantial amount of money when I was in prison, and you know, used that money in order to get a whole bunch of private lessons, which were pretty costly, but it was very worth it. The one place that accepted me was because of Hannah and this other guy Lonnie, who's a pro MMA fighter. It's incredible too. They worked the front desk there at this place that was called Crunch Fitness back then, an American Martial Arts Academy. It just so happened that Hannah had a boyfriend in the halfway house that knew me. And she's like, hey, what's up with this dude? Is he all right? Nothing weird with him or nothing? He's like, no, he's cool, he's cool. And because of that, she signed the paper saying I could train there. Oh, they got a lot of money. I was paying a lot for this private list. So they got a cut out of that. But turns out Paulo Santana, world champion in jiu-jitsu, world champion, 2-time Pan American champion, 2-time Brazilian national gold medalist in jiu-jitsu. It was the gym he taught at. Okay, came over here as an immigrant, you know, and has made a life. Has his own gym now, separate. He worked at this gym before, but he has his own gym, hugely successful. It just so happened the best person that I got to go to the best place. Now, they agreed that, you know, I could do it. So basically, I'd just go there and I'd train, and I'd just hang out by myself all day when I wasn't training. I had a phone that I kept there in a locker, a smartphone, you know, because you couldn't have smartphones at the halfway house. You had to turn your phone in at 9 every night. Couldn't have a camera for privacy of the other federal, you know, people that were there and the people at the Salvation Army. So I'd just sit and play on the phone when I wasn't training or lift weights. It was half weights. Well, actually, it was a third weight. So there was a big old weight room, free weights, everything. Then you walk through a doorway, it's jiu-jitsu mats, huge jiu-jitsu mats. Then in the third place, it looks like a CrossFit place, but it was really physical therapy was the major purpose of it. And it was all this one place, one business. But I'd hang out at the end of the empty jiu-jitsu mat. There's kind of like a little mini bleachers where parents could watch. And I'd hang out there between classes all day because it got to the point where didn't want to be in that halfway house. Everybody's twacked out of their mind, and it got to the point where it was scary, where if I had to take a leak, I would go in a urinal and lock the door behind me because I didn't know if somebody was going to attack me if I took a leak at the regular urinal. I was scared that one of these twacked out people was going to attack me when I wasn't looking, and, you know, end up having to whoop them and get sent back to prison. So I ended up staying at this halfway house at the jiu-jitsu school all day. And the one that really scared me, I'm going to tell you what it was. It was absolutely insane. And it was my roommate. I had to live with this guy. This guy smoked something. They have different, like, potencies of it, I guess, and this was really potent. And he smoked this stuff, and he went out of his mind. He chased a female counselor down the hallway with her screaming. She ducked in the office, shut the door, locked it, glass door. He starts beating on it. Then falls on the ground. They call EMS, like, what's wrong? What'd you take? And he said, I don't know. I'm effed up, but I feel so good. They took him to the hospital. He rode the bus back. They tested him. Guess what? They didn't test him for K2. He chased a counselor down a hallway, intoxicated, on K2, and he didn't get kicked out of the halfway house. He got let to stay in the halfway house. The only thing I ever saw them kick anybody out for was there was a guy that left and he didn't come back that night. If he didn't come back that night, they were going to send the marshals after you. So I was so scared about getting kicked out for any trivial reason, and it was actually the opposite of that. It was actually, it wouldn't kick you out for anything. And this guy left, and he didn't show up overnight. He got sent back. There was a guy that was got there the same time I did. He had this dental floss in his pocket, and that little prick, there was this little prick counselor. I think I mentioned him earlier. This is the second or third time I shot this, but there was a little prick counselor that was just over the top. And this guy, country guy, white guy, probably about my age, had Suboxone inside of a case of dental floss. He got caught with drugs in the halfway house. They didn't send him back to prison. They wasn't sending nobody back to prison there. So yeah, but when that guy chased that counselor and he got back, he was my roommate, and I said, man, I gotta ask you, what was going through your head? What were you feeling like? He said, I felt like I was this little ball, yo, and everybody was just trying to roll me. Made me laugh a little bit, but made me like, oh my God. Now eventually they quit allowing the PlayStation 3s and the Xboxes because they were using the internet. The internet was the Wi-Fi connection for the Salvation Army. We weren't supposed to have the password to. They had a computer lab that was only supposed to be for job searches. You weren't allowed to have Facebook, and they'd search your name. So people make fake names to make Facebooks. You'd get in big trouble for that. Huge restrictions. The punishments were terrible, but just about never get sent back to prison. And if they changed the Wi-Fi password, nobody would be able to use their smartphones. So when I wasn't at the jiu-jitsu school and I wanted to watch UFC fights, there was a guy who had his Xbox and everything hooked up in credit card, and I'd pay him cash money to order the pay-per-views, and everybody'd watch it. I found out the best way. I'm a smuggler. I've been smuggling since I was 16 years old, driving for the biggest dealer in my city. I'm the most creative person when it comes to hiding certain things, okay? There were a number of things that I snuck in that place. I decided I wanted to do chewing tobacco again. I don't know why, okay? But, I got a couple things of Chinese food, and I took put a bag of chewing tobacco underneath the fried rice in the one corner of it. Sometimes they go through stuff, look through a sandwich, stuff like that. They never caught me. But I wanted to have an iPad so I could watch the UFC fights, and I got data put on it. So data, I don't need a Wi-Fi password. It's got service like a telephone. How am I going to sneak this in? So for 2 weeks in a row before it happened, they'd have Bellator UFC every Friday night. I'd get 5 Little Caesars pizzas, just $25. And some people don't like fights, but everybody likes pizza. So it'd be fight night. We're going to watch the fights in the one TV room, in the far TV room. We're going to watch fight that night. Go to the other TV room, you don't like it. Now I'm going to buy pizza for everybody. Well, after the first 2 weeks, on the third week, I got an iPad, put it in a plastic bag. On the 4th pizza down, I put the iPad under the pizza. It was relatively flat. And of course, when I bring the pizzas in, they open like the first, second, sometimes the third box, never the fourth one. Saw them open the last once, but never the fourth one for some reason. I've got this like autistic way of, obsessing about which things they check and paying close attention to it. And I snuck an iPad in underneath those pizzas. Now, they disallowed the TVs. You couldn't have a smart TV or nothing. This hateful woman came in and wrecked the place. It was good when I first got there. Everybody had smart TVs, you had Netflix, everything else. You weren't bored. Then all they allowed was one of those unfold DVD players that a little cheap piece of trash DVD players. So I got one of those, and I got an iPad that was small. It was really small, but it was the same size as the screen of this flip-up DVD player, just a portable DVD player. So I put the iPad where the screen was propped up on it, and if they open the door randomly, to come check, see what's up in the room, it looked like I'm just watching my portable DVD player. It had data, it had the internet. I went on so many illegal movie sites, catching up on everything I missed. I watched every UFC fight, bought it right from the iPad. And they never caught it. And it was so good that I had one of my best friends, one of the few people I trusted, come in there. Had him come in there and I said, hey man, check this out. See what you think about this. And I had something play. And he's like, yeah, that's a pretty nice portable DVD player. Where'd you get that? I'm like, you don't notice nothing? He said, it's nicer than the normal ones, but nah, what's up? And I'm like, dude, check it out. And I pulled the, what? You couldn't notice it. I had it lined up so perfect. They never got there. They even searched the place once, kicked us. We all had to stand out in the parking lot of Salvation Army for 3-4 hours when they raided the place once. Didn't get it then. It was another story with that. But I pretty much ended up, after a certain point, just staying in my room out of fear. I mean, people were shooting up in there, speed, Suboxone for whatever reason, people shooting up. It was a nightmare of a place to live at, but I loved training jiu-jitsu. And the 2 months extra, I was training, it was 5 hours a day. The first day I ever trained jiu-jitsu officially, I trained 5 hours that day. I did a private lesson, not with Paula, but with this other guy, Caleb Frasher. Caleb was incredible. He got his brown belt in 6 years, which is quick to get a brown belt in. And he was just good. I mean, he won like IBJJF, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Atlanta, I think it was, and then won in Ohio. He was top guy, and he was good at what he did. He was good at jiu-jitsu. But I did my first private lesson with him after I did, an hour and a half, 2 hours of classes. And I'd do an hour and a half, 2 hours private lesson right after the first class. Then I'd hang out there all day long until the evening class. Then I'd do both evening classes, then I'd come home. And that was my escape. That was how I got out of there. I traded one addiction for another. But so many people in there, man, they're all getting just wrecked. And as a person trying to do the right thing, it's really hard. Not because I wanted to use, but because it's annoying. When you aren't on drugs and you're around a bunch of people that are on drugs, they're annoying. Like, it's not like you're mad that you can't use it. It's like you're looking at how stupid they are and you don't have patience for it. And part of you wonders, did I look like that when I used? Yeah, I probably did. And it's just so frustrating having to be around that. And it was wild though. I mean, there was one guy. Now, he ended up getting fired during the time I was there for some stuff he should have got fired for with some of the female people in there that put him out there. He got fired, but the cameras in the back, he'd like unplug or something. You could pay him so much money, and he'd let you go out. You could leave the halfway house. You had to get back before he got off his shift, but he'd let people go out at night and party if you paid him off. It was that wild, man. I'm telling you. And the stuff they had going on in there and everything, there were people that were full on hustling and everything else had stuff rigged up. They think they have it so good because you have to get approval, proof. Like if you go to Walmart, you got to bring back receipts and everything else. But man, there was stuff in place that should have worked, but there was incompetent staff that wasn't making it work. And they could have so simply tested for K. In prison, they test for K2. In prison, they test for Suboxone. They test for all that. Oh, yeah, there were all people in there were doing Suboxone because they didn't test for it. That was one they could test for if they suspected somebody. But K2, they didn't do that in the extended ones. And it seemed like, man, the majority of everybody in there was doing that stuff. I can't understand why you'd want to do it. Looking crazy, chasing someone down a hallway. Man, that was like the wildest stuff. And then that guy turns out to be my roommate. He wasn't a bad guy, but I mean, burnout, and I mean, when he was sober, he wasn't bad, but, it was make you nervous, and make you scared, people ripping off bathroom stalls, chasing counselors, they get twacked at, and you got to go to the bathroom they're in, or you're a roommate with that person, they come back in. I mean, that's some scary stuff now, when somebody's wigged out. I've used most drugs, just about every drug but PCP. I've sold. There's not a drug that I have done ever that left me in the condition that I saw these people when they did this synthetic stuff. This synthetic stuff takes people to the moon, out of the planet. I've never seen anything. There was nothing I ever used that made me that stupid, crazy, disconnected from reality. I snapped my finger an inch away from his eye to where I was practically touching his eyelashes, and he still didn't blink. And then ripping off. You didn't know what was going to happen in there. It was a wild, scary place. It got a lot of more specific stories about that place and certain people in it. Sad because a lot of the guys in there were good guys, and it sucks to see people get right back out and get right doing the same thing, and you know they're going to go right back. You know, I had a plan before I got out. I told everybody I was going to do it. A lot of people knew I was going to do it, but a lot of people like, you're going to get back out and do the same thing. I'd send pictures of me and Paulo and me training and everything else to my buddy Pinto, and he'd show them to the people. Then he'd tell me on the phone what they said when he showed it to him. I wanted to rub it in and be like, yeah, I am doing it. You know, I'm not back out doing the same thing. And you know, it's pretty cool being able to say that. But I had to find an interest in something. The whole time I sold drugs, used drugs, I couldn't talk about anything but drugs. Drug prices, how much sold, this, that. It was an obsession. The dealing part, probably more so than the using part, I had no interest. I was a boring person. And found an interest. It became a replacement addiction. A lot of people working out as that, you know, working out as a replacement addiction. But on top of, you know, getting rid of every single old friend, which is something that is a must, not going around the same places, and just switching up a lot of habits and lifestyle changes. You know, you got the replacement addiction. It's a big deal if you can find something to put yourself into that occupies that much time, because as an addict, you're always moving. As a dealer, you're always moving. You're meeting somebody every 20 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes sometimes. If you're, you know, stealing, scheming, scamming, you're going to this place. You know, I knew some people that go to Lowe's. They get like these buckets that will cost like $60, $80 or something. Oh, I pressed this. We're all good though. Oh, there, and they'd walk out the gardening section. Then they'd return it at another Lowe's, a county over, or a Walmart somewhere, and they get their money. They'd spend all day doing that, or stealing stuff, going back and forth to the pawn shops, using. You're always moving. And when you quit using, when you quit dealing, you quit moving, and you're stuck sitting still on the couch, bored as can be, or work some, you know, job, you know, just bored, just not doing anything. There's no excitement. You miss the excitement more than the drugs, you know, just all the crazy stuff that happens on a daily basis. And when it slows down and it's that boring and you don't have anything else to do to replace that you actually enjoy, it's hard. You want to get back into using just to have something to do. Shoot, I know that feeling. So, I mean, it can be weightlifting, I mean, it can be art, whatever it is, you know. But there's so many things that I've seen with the people that are successful in staying clean, and a big part of it is finding something that you have more than just an interest, something that can become almost a replacement addiction. For me, you know, aside from lifting, is training. That's what it was for me. It's what it is for me. And that's something that, you know, I figure I suggest out there. If you like the video, press the like button. If not, it's 27 minutes and 44 seconds of your time in which you'll never get back. Yeah, I've got a lot of stories about that halfway house. Spent 6 months there. You will not believe some of the stuff that happened there. You wouldn't believe some of the stuff the staff did. Blow your mind. Anyways, have a good one.